106.7 Lite FM.
I'm Christine, here with my friend Jack Cradaville and another great friend of ours, Dr. Oz, coming to join us today. Hi, Dr. Oz.
Good morning, everybody. How are you?
Good. It's nice to see you.
Always a blessing.
Yeah, thank you. It's been quite a season for you. You've had some amazing shows. And tomorrow you're getting into a topic that, my friends and I have just been talking about this. I think Netflix kind of sparked us. Ted Bundy. So they did they're showing a documentary, and they're also showing that movie with Zac Efron.
Exactly. And that's just Ted Bundy. It's a general infatuation with true crime. And we do a lot of investigations on the show anyway. And the reason I get into true crime is because the medical elements, this CSI part of crime has become really popular.
Mm-hmm.
Where we're solving crimes with DNA. We're understanding more about what makes people function the way they do. And I actually had an interesting interview recently with the guy who was the original FBI profiler. The guy who originally created the word serial murderer.
I see.
So I got a lot smarter about why people like Ted Bundy function. So on the show today, I've asked a woman, Kathy Kleiner's her name, to come in. Now, this is a very emotional interview because Kathy Kleiner was the one who testified against Ted Bundy at his murder trial. And to remind everybody, Ted had already killed a bunch of people in the Pacific Northwest. He'd escaped from prison not once but twice.
Right.
And then he flew down to Florida and hid there because that way they figured people in Florida didn't know what was happening in Colorado and Utah and Washington State. And while he was down there, he just couldn't hold himself back. And that's one of the questions. What made Ted Bundy want to kill again? He'd gotten away with it.
Mm-hmm.
He'd murdered all these women and was living on the lam, but he just loved the thrill of murder. So he goes in the sorority house and murders two women, goes to the next room, starts to murder them, and then a car pulls in like an angel. And you know how when you're sitting in a house and the front lights of a car swipe through the house?
Mm-hmm.
He panicked when he saw that, and he thought they were dead anyway. He ran away. Well, he hadn't killed them. And Kathy Kleiner was one of those two women who was beaten mercilessly, but she survived, and she's on the show talking about what it was like to survive his attempted murder, but also testify against him, looking at him in the face.
Oh, my goodness.
Wow.
And have him lie to her about what he did.
How old is she now?
Well, she was 20 at the time. Now she's in her 50s.
Yeah.
And this story is still like yesterday. And I don't think you ever move past some of those events.
I don't see how you could.
Absolutely not. You had mentioned, about the CSI aspect, and I find that stuff fascinating, how they use DNA and they look and the medical aspect. I just have to ask you, though, because you had started this a few years ago, and now it seems to have really taken off, people's fascination of the personality of someone like that, of what makes a person, a human being like us, do things like that we can't wrap our head around. I can't wrap my head around.
That's why true crime is so popular now, because true crime fundamentally is about us recognizing evil. So we're looking for good, but good's sort of everywhere, hopefully, and slow moving, and you don't always notice it. But evil starkly differentiates itself from normal life. So the question again, what makes Ted Bundy do what he did, or
Exactly.
BTK, or all the other, Golden State Killer? Sometimes it's prefrontal cortex not working normally, so you're sort of reptilian. Cats don't feel remorse when they kill a bird. It's just.
But this guy was smart.
Nature, yeah.
Yes, but you can lack prefrontal cortex function and
still
not
be
have
intelligent?
empathy, but have every part of your brain working and be incredibly manipulative. And that's actually what most serial murderers do.
So dangerous.
They're charismatic.
Yeah.
And again, I was talking to these different profiles. You realize these people are effective because they're really good at conning you. If Ted Bundy was sitting in my seat right now, you'd be palling around with him, having a good time. He was handsome, charismatic. He understood you. He'd respect you. And then something would snap. And the key question I've been taught to ask is, what did it feel like the first time you did it? The very first time you did
That's
what was
interesting.
bad. First time you did drugs, shoplifted, murdered somebody, whatever it might be.
Right.
And a lot of times, of course, they hurt animals first. What does it make you feel like when you hurt a defenseless animal? Because it's all about power. And then you begin to rape, then you begin to murder. And then as a society, we start to struggle because we always think things are motivated. If you hurt someone, you must have had a reason for it.
Right.
But 40% of murders in America are unsolved. 40%.
Wow.
We're not actually as good as we think we are. People do get away with it.
Wow.
And the ones that get away tend to be ones that are particularly sociopathic.
Right. And so when you've interviewed these people, and when you say it's animals and then it moves on to people, they're actually taking pleasure from doing this, from harming?
They get a thrill from control. In fact, Ted Bundy and other serial murderers would go back to visit the victim. So they'd murder the woman, throw her body in the brush, and then go back a week later, 2 weeks later. Sometimes they even copulate with the body. But this is grotesque. I mean, you already murdered them. Now their dead bodies being mutilated by you further and debased, and yet you somehow get a thrill out of that. And in fact, one of the murders that was just solved, it was a cold case murder, but they solved it with DNA, which I'll get into in a second. But when they finally figured out who they thought it was, they had no idea why this man would have murdered this couple. So basic story, it's up in the Pacific Northwest. A couple is having dinner. They call their mother-in-law saying they're not coming over that night. They're having an intimate dinner. The two of them are there, but the table is set for 3. Table's set for 3. The husband and wife are murdered. Wife's raped. Man, the third person, there's missing. So they have no idea who it is. Cold case. They get DNA out of her. Years later, run it. And then what you do with DNA is you can see is there a third cousin to the person who was the murderer. If you find 2 third cousins, you can triangulate it. Now you have a cousin from the mother's side, cousins from the father's side.
Wow.
Where do they overlap? Well, that's who the murderer was. So they figure out who it is. And the reason they know this was him is he went to the funeral.
Whoa.
The murderer he didn't know them. He went to the funeral to watch his work. And these people almost always have a big problem with their mother. I mean, really big problem with their mother. Like wanting to kill their mother. And they take that murder's rage out on others.
That's one of the things I wanted to ask you. You talked about, there could be a problem with the brain that's fundamental. But is there also something that can break these people in their childhood? Some type of abandonment, something that they witnessed or abuse or something?
A brilliantly insightful question. And I'll share something with you that I've learned. The line between good and evil travels through every human heart. That's actually been said by others, but I never understood what it really meant. All of us have evil in us. There's a good friend of mine who
Are we born with evil? I mean, when we start off, or do we learn that?
No, I think we're born with the power to be evil. Again, you don't have to do it. You're just born with the power. Remember that the quote in the Bible that says, "The meek shall inherit the earth." And that always used to bother me. I always thought meek meant weak. I don't know if you guys ever felt that, but why would the weak people get the earth? Don't you want to earn it? Right? Well, it turns out that's not what meek means.
Yeah.
What meek means is you have a sword. You're knowledgeable about how to use it to kill, but you sheath it. You put it in your belt. You don't use it. That's what meek means. You have the power to do harm, but you elect not to. That's who inherits the earth. So all of us have the ability to do real harm. The question is, will we or not? And there's this, Jordan Peterson, who's this fascinating Canadian psychologist, had a quote on my show. He said, "You never want to give your kids the ability to make you hate them. You don't want your kids to ever do things that make you dislike them. And the reason that's important is because you will dislike them. And when you dislike them, you do things that are irreparably harmful to them. So you never want to be in that scenario, because if you give your kids reasons to feel they were disliked, they won't grow up normally. In fact, the most reproducible key to success in a child's life is did they feel they were loved. Not were they loved, but did they sense that they were loved?
I had a psychologist say to me one time, I said, "My first child, what do I do?" And he goes, "Well, you got me, but the only thing I can tell you is love them."
Yeah.
Love them.
And make sure they know it.
And you touched on something before that I thought was very interesting. When I first became a manager at a place, somebody told me that power is best when not used. You're more powerful when you don't use it, when you don't take it out on others. And that had to rattle around in my head for a while, but it made a lot of sense.
It's like our voice. The most powerful people whisper. They don't have to yell. They speak softly. People are yelling and angry, this and that. Well, you quickly discount them. And that's what young men have to learn that. They think if I'm the loudest person in the room, I'll get heard, because when you're younger, yelling, people do listen to you because they want to make sure you're not in pain or help you through it. But as you get older, you learn that you don't want to use your power. That's where the real effort lies. And that's why we look for true crime. Because those are examples when people manipulate the system. They've hacked the system to do bad, and you want to notice it so you don't fall prey to it yourself, but you can also observe it in others. And that's probably the biggest epiphany. If you see something, say something.
Right.
We too often witness things that we know we should stand up for. I mean, what is evil? Evil is not when bad people do bad things. Evil is when good people watch bad people do bad things and don't stop it. That's evil. And in our society, we are reminded that. Stop complaining about other people. Figure out where you're empowered, where you have the responsibility and the opportunity.
Right. Wow. Well, all of us can make a difference in the smallest way. I think just in every positive deed that we do, we've got to feel like we're able to do something. Otherwise, this whole world feels overwhelming, you know?
Well, your challenge in life is to take the chaos around you. Chaos is in every story, right? The Bible, it's all about chaos. And take that chaos and use your truth to hone it, to harvest it into something that actually could give light to the world. That's your life goal. Now, if that, and it sounds aspirational, it is a little bit. You want to aim for something that's big. Figure out exactly how you're going to make that come to truth. Aim high, and if you don't succeed, it's okay because you aimed high. And if you do succeed, God bless you. Keep moving, set higher goals.
Beautiful. So, all right. So this episode, this Dr. Oz episode, a little intense.
Must
We are
see.
going to move on. It is definitely must see. Your shows always are. But we'll move on to something a little lighter, although it could lead to some issues. The pool floats that have been so popular these past few years, right? I think unicorns are in right now, and like floating boyfriends. Pretend boyfriends. I'm looking at producer Jamie because that was a news story that was a news story that we had that she and I just thought
She
was
has 3.
very, very funny. Okay, she's got 3. There's the PVC, the stuff that they're made of is dangerous for us.
Well, you know that smell, a new car smell, or the plastic smell? when you
New
first
plastic
package
smell,
it?
yeah.
Right. So that, in order to make plastic bend, you have to put something into it. And they often use polyvinyl chloride, PVC. And these chemicals are estrogen disruptors. They mess with your hormones. And so we've learned a fair amount about how these can be harmful. I don't want people throwing away their pool floats. You want they're fun. I get it. Nothing's nothing's healthier than having a good time.
Yes.
However, I don't want kids lying on these pool floats all day long. You don't want to sleep in them. Put them outside, let them off gas, let them get some of that smell out. And then over time, it'll become a little less impactful. But there's a lot of work being done now to figure out exactly if there's a concern. And hopefully companies will make these products with different kinds of softening agents, not the ones they've been currently using.
Are these the things, too, that they put on little child's arms? Like they call them
floaties?
Floaties. They're also present in floaties. But, of course, if you're lying in a floaty, it's not... And if you're swimming with a floaty, there's an incremental benefit to having that on. So, again, I don't want parents panicked about this news.
Maybe air them out, though, you're saying.
Air them out for sure. And I also am encouraging manufacturers to look for better solutions.
Okay.
I don't want to give these guys a pass because I do have concerns about these polyvinyl chlorides. Again, you're only using it for a few hours a day, for a few months a year, so it's not as bad as things that we have in our house that are similarly like the flame retardants, for example, that we often use that I have concerns about. But it's a call to action for everybody.
Just a side note, is this the same, plastic bottles? I know we're told don't let them sit in the sun, right? Isn't it possible for something to leach from the plastic?
Plastic, when it's heated, like if you microwave it as well, can chemically react. Most plastic bottles now are made from plastics that are not detrimental in themselves, but there was a great study looking at some of these bottled waters, and yes, there are plastic residue found in them. Are they harmful? Unclear, but they definitely have residue in them. That's why I prefer to use a filter in a house faucet. That's a better way of getting your water. Plus, you don't put plastic in the ocean.
True. We're trying to stop that. And then let's move on to Wednesday's show, because then we get to have some fun and do some cooking, some barbecuing. Right?
Daphne's on, yes.
I'm
Daphne,
all
Your
in on
daughter.
this.
Yes, let's go.
Mykonos burger. So Daphne, with a couple of co-hosts, has been making a bunch of shows called The Dish on Oz. And it's called The Dish because they dish on stuff. They talk about stuff, but they also are making dishes of food. So they're making, it's a Greek-themed, even though I'm Turkish, a Greek-themed episode. And we're going to make Mykonos burgers. The Mediterranean diet is the healthiest diet of all.
Yes, right.
And there was a great article in the Times this weekend about a study that just came out that you might enjoy. It basically said they took a bunch of people and they put them in these very closed environments. And they fed them exactly what the study said they should be fed. So they had the same amount of calories, same amount of nutrients, macronutrients, same amount of carbs, protein, fats, etc., same amount of fiber. But half the people got food that was real food that came out of the ground looking the way they were eating it. And the other half got processed foods, but all healthy, like baked potato chips, not fried. I mean, things you'd buy in a store. And they found at the end of the study that people who were eating the same calories, same everything from whole food sources were more satiated and ate less. 500 calories less.
Wow.
500 calories,
difference.
which is a pound a week. It's a big difference.
That is.
And they could do it. And then they flipped them. They put the people who are healthy and the unhealthy, not unhealthy, but the processed healthy foods.
Yes.
And they started to eat more food. So it turns out that how you eat your food matters. The Mediterranean diet is because you're making food yourself. You're not trusting others to do it for you. You put the right things in there and it adds up. And that's why I think this episode is so compelling, because we're going to show you how to make just about everything you want to make, but all based on the fundamental Mediterranean tradition.
Fun. Nice. Okay, so that's all Wednesday. So we get the floaties. Information on Wednesday. We get the barbecue information on Wednesday, and Tuesday. Definitely tune in for this woman's story. Who
Ted
survived
Bundy,
a
true
run-in with
Wow.
Ted Bundy. My goodness. Okay, Dr. Oz, it's always so great when you come to visit us.
Thanks for having me on, Christine.
Always, we'll watch you weekdays on Fox 5 at 1 o'clock. Thanks so much, Dr. Oz. Have a great summer.
Same to you.
Thank
Lots
you.
of love. Bless you both.
Bye-bye.